Hi everybody, I'm Bobby Lane. I am, as you can see by reading here, I'm a commercial photographer. What that means is that most of the work that I do is geared towards businesses and industry. I do a lot of work for companies where it's a description of their, on their websites, executive portraits, locations, corporate identity. Plus, you know, I do editorial, I've done advertising, I've done an awful lot of stuff over my 40-something year career. I've been doing this for quite some time. I'm a really dedicated photo educator. That's one of the reasons why I'm here. I'm really passionate about being able to take the information that I have learned over all this time and being able to share it with other people so that you can follow your path, not my path, follow your path so that you can be a better photographer. I also lead photo tours around the world. You probably can't see, but this is my fabulous husband right here, Lee Varys. And he and I have, he's the Lee Varys. We have Bobby and Lee's Photo Adventures, bobbyandleesphotoadventures.com, and we lead tours all over, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But I'm also really a lover of light. My nickname is Mistress of Light because I talk and teach about lighting, both natural light, artificial light, studio strobes, portable flash, any kind of lighting. I do a lot of education for that, because that's really what it's all about, right? I mean, we don't have light just to illuminate. We have light so that we can describe the subject, okay? And I love life and I love people. So that's what this is about. This show that we're talking about here is about environmental portraits. So the first section on this is going to be the corporate and the editorial. Now, when we say environmental portrait, obviously that means we're not in a studio. So what do? We're trying to use the environment to give more information about the person as well as make a beautiful image. We're trying to do this so that we are describing a nice composition, putting the person inside, and you have a much fuller picture than what you would get instead of just a plain background. So I wanted to start off with this. This is the one that they have chosen to use to advertise this class. This is in Dubai. That's the Burj Khalifa. It is the tallest building in the world. And actually, I had just, when I shot this, which was 4.5 years ago, I had just gotten my X-T1, my Fuji. Sorry, I have to tell you that. I always say that I'm #1 in the Fuji cult. I'm a Fuji X-Team photographer, and this was shot with the Fuji X-T1 and the 56mm lens. And this is all natural light. So I have a lot of pictures to show you guys. Some of them I'm going to tell you stories, but I want to start off with this and just talk about it, because when I got to this location, I scouted. I looked around, I looked through the camera, I took some pictures without anybody in it. I was looking for a composition that I could make work that would tell the story. So this is a young man, he's an up-and-coming executive. He's from the US, but is living in Dubai. And he's a Buddhist, he's got great energy, he's a lovely person, but he's strong in what he does. And I wanted to show off that strength, and I wanted to show off that he is looking towards his future. So I'm trying to make the composition so that I have the curve pulls you in. You know, he's strong, he's not right in the center, he's a little bit off, and then we have, you know, the tallest building in the world behind there. So this is a pretty powerful shot. The next one is done with a portable flash in just a 2-foot by 2-foot softbox, just held off camera. I'm still balancing the light here. I do a lot of what we call dragging the shutter, which is balancing the flash and the ambient light, and you're going to see a lot more of that as we go on a little bit. But this is one of those, of doing that. So it's just a variation on that. This is my fabulous husband, Lee Varys. If you couldn't see him over here, you can now see him on the screen. And actually, this was the ad for the X-T1 for about 6 months. This was the ad that was going in all the magazines. This is also dragging the shutter. So what we were doing here was basically, we're in a small gallery, and we're making it look like he's the artist. This is the gallery show, but it's more about him than it is about the pictures, right? It's like this is a photograph about him. Environmental portraits can be one of two things. They can either be about the person with the environment supporting. Sometimes it's the environment with the person as an object in there. It still is a portrait, but sometimes it can be a little bit more about the environment. So here it's more about him. So there's a studio strobe on him, there's a pro photo on him with a beauty dish and a reflector, and then there are the lights in the background, you know, the gallery lights, they're little spotlights, and then this is about a 1/4 of a second, maybe a 1/2 a second exposure, and I'm actually shaking the camera a little bit during the exposure to make the blur in the background, but he's frozen by the strobe. I can't do too much, I can only do a little, but again, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that later. This is a little bit about this is also inspiration. This is Bill Sumner. Bill Sumner is the photographer that I learned from. When I left photography school, I went to work for Bill full-time in Boston. I'm from Boston, by the way. I went to work for him full-time. He was one of the top advertising photographers in Boston at the time. This was in the late 70s. And he shot everything. We did 35 to 8 by 10. We shot hot lights. We did everything you could think of. We did 8 by 10 shoes. We did 35mm fashion on location. We did such a wide variety of things. Bill went on to move to Dallas, and from there, his career really took off, and he did sports posters for Nike for 15, 20 years. So what he's got here, he's holding a couple of the sports posters surrounded by all this different kind of lighting gear, and he's holding a portable flash and lighting his pictures with the flash. So this was really an homage to, you know, there's a little inky dink down here, the 8 by 10, all these different kinds of things. It was an homage to Bill. Still is a great shooter. I was hired by Brand Week magazine. They were doing the 10 best marketers of the year, and you guys are all familiar with Kayak, you know, the search engine. So this is Hefner, Mr. Hefner, I can't remember his first name right now. So we did a whole variety of things. This is the shot that was used in the magazine, but I wanted to show you thinking about this. Now, behind him, you see kind of like a map of the world. I brought that. But I had gone over the week before, and I had kind of scouted. Now, it's Kayak. There's a paddle that's got the kayak. I've got a globe. It's a search engine. He's holding a magnifying glass over, and we were gonna drop in the Kayak logo into the computer here. But this was one of the shots that we did, and this was another one. So I had 3 or 4 different shots when I went to go do this. I had scouted. I had looked. I liked the composition here with the curving table. I was going to retouch out the back and all of that. But the magazine went with this. Sometimes the simplest one is the best. It's the strongest because it gets the idea across. Okay, on location. Again, another drag in the shutter. I'm balancing the flash with the ambient light. I'm using the ambient light that's in the barn. So that's just, and I let it be tungsten. But she's again lit with a battery pack strobe on location. I did 3 shots of this as well, but this is the one that I felt really speaks the most. You know, it's not a lot of information in the background here. It's more about them. But sometimes, again, you get in and you start to shoot and you discover things. I have a whole series of images that I did on this, but those were the 2 that I liked the best. Now here's another, a few of these that I'm showing you were like 3s that I've done. This was for, you know, the University of Phoenix. It's like online learning. So this woman works for the Air Force. She works at Hanson Air Force Base in Massachusetts. And there's 3 different shots of her. So it's, in this case, they were doing more than one picture. Sometimes you walk around, when you're going to an environment, you walk around and you go, you know, there's pictures of old guys hanging on the wall back here, right? And then there's a plexiglass thing, and if you're looking like this, it's not that interesting. But then when I look up on the ceiling, and I see the curve, and I see the lights, and I think, okay, well, that's pretty cool. Now I'm making a composition, and I can still put that in here. And you can still see the wings here. You know, she's the public affairs person for the Air Force Base. So, you know, it's just little bits of things to get the idea across. You don't need to whack somebody over the head. Gee, here's somebody who works for the Air Force at the Air Force Base, and look, there's a plane. You don't always need to whack somebody over the head. You can tell them a little bit and let the person get a little bit more involved in the picture. Let your viewer get a little bit more involved, although I still really like this picture. Okay, this is another one. This is a builder in upstate New York. And so in his lobby, it's this curved room. I thought that was pretty interesting. Very simple on the lighting on this. I actually bounced it into a piece of foam core board, so the light spreads. All the light that you see on his face, all of this here is lit by one light bounced into a white card about this big, and it spreads out. And then there's a light in the ceiling in the background and a light over here to light up the inside. So this was the hero shot. This was for, when I lived in Connecticut, I lived in Ridgefield, and it was Ridgefield Magazine, and I was their primary photographer. So a couple of variations on this. This is one of the rooms. Again, it looks like it's lit by daylight. There was no daylight here. You can see this long room, and you see the white wall. Well, the opposite wall was also a white wall, and I just took 4 strobe heads and made the entire room one giant light box. So then I could walk around anywhere and have beautiful light on them. So that's the wide version, and then here's the tighter version. But again, I'm coming down low. I'm using a wide-angle lens. You got to think about getting away from just being eye level. We normally think about being like right here, but As you saw in the other one, I was down low looking up at that woman, and here I've got a wide angle. You know, you're trying to make dynamics. Whenever you add diagonal lines into a picture, it's going to be more dynamic. This is Alan Menken. He has more Oscars than any other living human being. He wrote all the songs for the Disney movies. Okay, so this is, you can see there's the teapot up there and Aladdin's lamp, and the Sebastian from the Littlest Mermaid. So again, I'm balancing the light here. He not only writes the songs, but he also scores. So he writes the music that goes along to the movie. So in his studio, he has the movies playing in the background as he's writing and composing. So this was the hero shot for the magazine. There were several other shots involved in this too. Now these two, I want to show you these two because these are a little quirky. A company called Beantown Productions in Los Angeles. And what they do, this company, they cut the TV commercials for TV shows. So when you see, and tomorrow night on The Simpsons, and you see a little clip, that's what their business is. And The Simpsons is one of their clients. So I walked into this room and he had all of these yellow walls, so I just bounced the light off of the wall, used a wide angle lens, and then this is his partner. And he had all these toys, and I surrounded him. He's got a little bit of Bart Simpson in there too. So this is on location environmental portraits for a company. When I am hired by a company to do portraits for their website, I will design a lighting style for that company based upon what kind of company they are. You know, sometimes it's a little more serious, so it's a little more dramatic. Sometimes it's a little lighter and brighter. In this particular case, the company was interested in having the pictures of the people. They wanted them all on location, but they didn't want them looking at the camera. So this entire job, I shot 20 people. I had one piece of foam core board and one studio strobe, bounced it in, all the light that you see here, beautiful skin tones, and the light falls off in the background and still looks absolutely beautiful. So again, not a lot of information. You don't have to beat it over the head to know that she's in an office, right? I mean, we can tell that that's an office back there. Obviously, he's at his workstation. Okay, we lived in Scituate, Massachusetts for a while, and this was our local barber where Lee would go and get his hair cut. And they said that they were doing a new website, so we said, let us come in and do your portraits for you. So we did a whole series of portraits for all their barbers. Simple, okay. I love to do industrial work. I'm one of those people when somebody says, here's an industrial job, we want you to go into the factory, it's really kind of dirty and gritty, and I go, oh my God, I'm so excited. Because it's so graphic. There's so many great things you can do. Now, obviously, this isn't a lab, but this is not in a gritty place. But I love doing industrial stuff. And again, here is more about what the idea is than it is really about the person. I shot this both ways with him in focus, but it was much more interesting to have the colored water be different. Very simple. It's like one umbrella, a portable flash. This is actually in Saudi Arabia. This is for Aramco. You know, they're the largest oil company in the world. And this is in their facility. So it's dragging the shutter. The one man is lit by the one umbrella, and the rest of it is just pulling in the ambient light. Now, this wasn't the guy I was supposed to photograph, but how could you resist photographing him, right? He was like the greatest guy. So this was, again, corporate identity. I was photographing the different product managers in each different area. And this was not his area, but I brought him in so that I could use him in this photo. This is where all the computer servers are for this company. This is for a pharmaceutical company that's in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And there's a theme here. It's, again, for all of these, it's all light, brighter. Orange is in their logo. Intelia is the name of the company. And so everything is done. I tried to keep it, like, overlight the background so it's a little bit brighter. Keep everything light and bright and just kind of keep that feeling going out throughout the whole thing. And most of the people who work there are young. It's a young startup company. Sister Jenny, I love this story. She started a place called the Puente Center. And what they did, they're in East LA, and they educate adults, mostly Spanish-speaking people, and they teach them English. They teach them how to read and write. They teach them computer skills, and they give them jobs, and they don't charge anybody anything. And everything comes from corporate donations. So corporate and private donations. So this building that we're in here, and you know, it takes a village. These are all people who work for Puente to help do the education. This particular building used to be a gas station in South Central that was burnt in the riots. And the gas company came to Sister Jenny and they said, we know what you're doing in East LA. instead of us building another gas station, we thought we'd do something for the community. Would you build another one here? So that's what this is. I love this, a horologist of London. So that's somebody who actually, you know, horo is Latin for time. It's not, one of my friends said, is that somebody that studies English prostitutes? No. So anyway, I just put the clocks in the front, the grandfather clocks in the back. He had his little hammer, okay? Nicholas Herrera, he's an artist in New Mexico. That's actually a desk. Dean Meeker, he got a Guggenheim for creating a certain kind of printing process, but he was a painter, a printer, a sculptor. He's gone now. Dave Christensen, painter, actually he paints all these like really brightly covered colors of New York City, but he lives in upstate New York where it's all gray. Adele Balkin, she's gone now. She was 92 years old when I photographed her. She was a costumer for the movie studios, and this was her first exhibit of her own work. But she worked on Cleopatra with Claude Colbert in the 30s, and then again with Elizabeth Taylor in the 60s. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences did a book on her, and they used my photos in her book. Okay, so that's the corporate stuff. Okay, now this stuff is stuff that people I know, there's some actors in here, there's friends, it's a whole variety of stuff. And this first part of it is kind of like an ode to my photographer friends. Mostly women photographers, but there's a few others. This is Debbie Fleming Caffery, fine art photographer. She is from Louisiana, and she loves to go dancing, and she talks like this, but she does stuff, her stuff is all black and white. She has a book called The Shadows, but her house is filled with religious icons. So there you can see, you know, there's the Madonna and the child, and there's all this other stuff in the background, and I like that, but I really think that this is a much stronger picture. This is Karen Kuhn. She is my muse. She is one of the most incredible environmental portrait photographers I have ever seen in my life. Incredibly creative person. She too lives right outside of Albuquerque. She has a farm, and she has, I don't know how many dogs and cats. I mean, I think there's 6 in this picture, but she has horses and donkeys and mules and sheep and like all kinds of stuff. But she also is really into fashion, so that's, I can't even remember whose the designer dress it is. This is Karen Hutton. She's another Fuji photographer. Her tagline is that she is the purveyor of awesomeness. This is Claire Rosen, fine art photographer. She has a thing called the traveling mouse. So there's pictures of her with this mouse mask on. Teresa Airy is also a fine art photographer. She does a lot of infrared and hand coloring. This is her goose, lit with a little portable flash with a grid spot on it, and it was about to start snowing. David Michael Kennedy, another fine art photographer that used to be in New York City and used to do every album cover you can imagine between Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, Debbie Harry, Willie Nelson, Isaac Stern, you name it. In New Mexico, this is him in New Mexico. David Burnett, Pulitzer Prize winning photographer. I just did this a month or so ago. And this was at a gallery show, and what I was doing here is that Ted Kennedy is looking this way, and Bob Marley's looking this way, so I put him in the middle and had him be direct. You know, if you ever have a chance to hear him talk, you should. He's really fantastic. That was with one little portable flash. One of my favorite places in the world to shoot is Bethesda Terrace, you know, where the Bethesda Fountain is, because it's so beautiful in there. This is one of the models that I use when I teach at the International Center of Photography. He's a sculptor model, and he's just absolutely amazing, Jim Carvalho. Steampunk. We have a steampunk festival in Waltham, Mass. Every year that Lee and I have only been to once, but because we're out of town every other time. But this is all portable flash off camera. Okay, and this we just did. When the X-T3 first came out, Fuji lent us one for 5 days. So we dropped everything and tried to put together a bunch of shoots. So there was an art installation in Boston that was called Fog and Flow, and it was a Japanese artist who installed these tubes that send out fog, and Flow is for Frederick Law Olmsted, who designed Central Park. He also designed all these places in Boston. So there was an old ruined fort in Franklin Park, and the fog kept coming out in different places. So we took a friend of mine who's an up-and-coming actor and dressed him up in all this stuff and took him out there with the fog, portable flash off camera, ProPhoto A1 off camera. And then there was a tunnel that went to where the fort used to be, one flash behind him and one flash on him, and It's again, you're just trying to tell a story, right? So this is natural light. We did the cosplay stuff at the NECC conference in Massachusetts, New England Camera Club Council. And we had cosplay stuff, and there was this graffiti wall. So I just put Batman into the graffiti wall. This was, again, that 5 days that we had the XT3. I had it for 2 months after that, but when I originally, it was just the 5 days. So this is the little girl across the street. She's a princess. She's calling into her powers. She has her wand to light her way, and she has her faithful companion at her feet. Musicians, I do a lot of musicians. This is actually Lee's sister. They live in Durango, Colorado. So, you know, again, trying to get a little bit of the place of the setting about where you are. A very elegant lady. This is Lee's stepmom. So there's a lot of, like, nepotism going on here. That's just all natural light, but she's a very elegant lady, and it's just, sometimes it's just like simple, and getting the pose right is important. This is the same guy who was in the fog with a sword. So this is the first professional shoot that he'd ever had done. Just natural light using a reflector model. This is an actor. This is the lens baby, but you know, it's like he could be a director who's really distraught about the play, or an actor who is like flipping out about something. Okay, in Grand Central Station, this is another one of the models I use for my ICP classes. We're telling a story. This is a film noir, right? He could be, the light is coming down from low, he's looking over his shoulder, somebody could be after him, he's a detective, he could be looking for somebody. You know, you don't know. It's about putting your setting, using your setting, and then putting your person in it and lighting it effectively so that you're really getting that story to come across. Same thing, Grand Central. What am I doing here? We're doing, again, flashes on her, and I'm zooming during the exposure. What happens in Grand Central? Chaos, right? So she's sitting down, looking at her phone, she's trying to figure out where she's going, but there's chaos going on around her. An electric cello, I'd never seen one before. A clown. Debbie would probably like this picture. But he's kind of like the lost clown. This is Doc Evermore. He's made the largest junk metal sculpture in the world, which is called the Forevertron. It's in Wisconsin. And this is what he calls one of his riding birds. And if you look at this, you can see this is all made out of scissor blades. And he welds all this stuff together. And he's always has the cigar in his mouth. He's a real character. You're welcome, girls. Another actor, just, you know. Sometimes I find great places, and of course I already have my best model right next to me. So this is in the train station in St. Louis. I do a lot of musicians. You know, I live in Massachusetts, and I grew up with a lot of musicians, and they're still my friends. And I got to back up a little bit. You know, I was born and raised in southeastern Massachusetts, went to school in Boston, lived in Boston for 5 years, and then I moved to California, and I was in California for 25 years. And then I moved to Connecticut. I was there for 10 years, and 7 years ago I moved back to Massachusetts. So all those people that I had friends in elementary school and junior high school are still my friends, and they're still there. So this is Craig Carter. I've known him since we were 14 years old, and he has a band called The Hurricane. So we took him out to the Situate Lighthouse, thought that that was an appropriate place to have them. So, okay, now, I live in Carver, okay? It is the cranberry capital of the world. This is my second year of photographing the harvest. I have gotten to know some of the harvest managers for some of the bigger companies that are down there. By the way, in case you don't know, Ocean Spray is a cooperative. It's not a single company. It's a whole bunch of little companies that come together. So, I've been doing this for 2 years now, and I've had an opportunity to be able to get into some places and see some things. That's a whole project in itself, which I'm not showing you, but some of these pictures were done just like 2 weeks ago, right at the very, very end of the harvest. So these guys have either got teal or blue gloves with the cranberries. So I just asked all the guys to put up their hands. So there they're raking. And here they've got they're pulling the boom in. And if you look, I'm sorry, I could talk about this like all day long. So right here, you see those 4 little posts? Right underneath of that is a vacuum tube. And it's sucking all the cranberries into this tube that goes up into a truck where they get cleaned off and then dumped into the big tractor trailer trucks. So I'm up in the truck now looking down on this. And this is actually done with the 10-24 lens because, you know, this place is big. You know, the bogs they can be huge. So you get up a little bit higher and you're looking down, and you need to get as wide as you possibly can to see what's going on. So I was told that when they're pulling the boom trying to pull the cranberries in, that it's like trying to drag a dead whale. Okay. Lens baby. You guys know the lens baby? I love playing with the lens baby. Just, again, sometimes it's a sense of place. It's just a little bit of a mystery. Okay, now, this is one of my favorite ones that I like to talk about. I spent 5 years going to a powwow in Idaho, the Shoshone-Bannock Reservation outside of Pocatello. And I've had gallery show, I've had major presentations about this. It was a while ago now, but this is Walter Old Elk Jr., and that is his son, Brandon Old Elk. Walter is a traditional dancer, and his son is what's called a grass dancer. So he has all it's like, looks like just yarn strands hanging from him. This is again where, I heard somebody say this recently, and it's not original, so I'm going to give credit. I'm stealing this, but painters work in addition. They start with something blank and they add to it, right? Photographers start with the world and you eliminate. So one is adding and one is subtracting. So lots of times, it's pretty overwhelming when you go out into the world. There's so much to see, so much to shoot. And I'm sure that all of you have been through, geez, that was really great right here, but you're not seeing all this other stuff that's going on, so it gets really busy. So, eliminate, eliminate, eliminate. And remember, you don't have to show everything to get the idea across. So when you look at these pictures, if you imagine that you're standing next to them, you kind of get the feeling like you're looking out on empty plains, right? You're in the plains and there's nothing out there and there's some teepees and it's very peaceful and calm and quiet, right? Would you agree? Right? It kind of looks like that. The truth is that I'm kneeling down, looking up at Walter, and it's so loud he can't hear me because there's the powwows going on. So there's the dance and the music that's going on. There's people who've got their camper vans parked and they've got their barbecues out and they're cooking food and people are selling stuff and little kids are running around and dogs are running around. If I stood up at eye level, it was chaos. So eliminate. Eliminate until you come down to what is it that's necessary. I know that's a teepee. Do I need to have that in focus? Do I need to see the whole thing? No, I get enough. I can understand he's a Native American by the look and the costume, so I'm automatically going to fill that in. And with this, even that, it's just the smallest amount of a teepee there, but it's like you don't need to show it all. Don't assume that your viewer is so visually ignorant that they don't understand what they're looking at. You don't have to spoon feed. It's much better for the viewer to get involved. Maybe you don't understand everything that's going on, which means you look at the picture a little bit longer. And isn't that what you want? You want people to look at your images. You want to spend some time, right? So you got to be clear of your concept. So that's something that's really important. What's the concept? Okay? It's great if you have wonderful technique and you might have a great location, but if you don't have an idea about what it is that you're trying to say, then all the great technique and location in the world isn't going to make a good photo. Everything's got to match together. So, you as the photographer, you are the director, you are the lighting expert, you are posing and directing, you are doing the costuming, you're telling them what to wear, you're figuring out, everything, the production. It's like you're the producer, you're everything, right? As a photographer, you have to be like 7 things at the same time. So make sure that you have the concept and that all of these other things are going to come in to help with that. So for this picture here, this is a weaver in Las Vegas, New Mexico, not Nevada, okay? He is the 3rd generation Spanish weaver. There's a lot of weavers in that area. And he has a weaving school as well as a store. So I came walking into this place, and there was nobody in there except for him. And it was a big place, 2 stories high, open, probably about 5 times the size of this room. And he was like sitting way over there. He was the only one in there. And I looked at him and I went, wow, what a great face this man has. You can see all of this history that he has with him here, right? And I looked around the store, and there was a lot of stuff. But right behind the cash register was this blanket. And there was a patch of direct sunlight that was coming through and hitting the blanket. And I know the light, I understand. I looked at him, I looked at that, and then I went, okay. In about 15 minutes, the sun is going to move. Actually, the Earth is rotating. The sun's not moving. The Earth is rotating, and that light is going to come off the blanket and come more forward. So I went over and I talked to him. I introduced myself and I asked if I could photograph him, and he said yes. And he started to get up, and I said, "That's okay. Wait a minute." I said, "Let me look around the store. I want to see if I want to buy something. So just go ahead and sit for a little bit longer." So I did, and I walked around and I waited, and when I could see that the light was in the right place, then I asked him to come over, and he's actually standing. The cash register is right here. Okay, it's like it's right here. And all I have to do is show a little bit of that blanket to know. Now, I always say when we talk about shooting natural light portraits, it's what I call portraits unplugged. Rule number one is no direct sunlight on a person's face unless it's the first or last hour of the day. But then you break the rules. Okay, this is 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The sun is pretty hard. But what I did was I turned his face up into the light so that I got the Rembrandt lighting pattern on him. There's great light in his eyes. I am down a little bit lower looking up. It's a little reverential. I'm giving him some respect and having him look up into the light. It's kind of like he's lit by this like gorgeous light that's just, like blessing him. And do I pop up all the wrinkles? Do I see all of the texture and the detail? Yes, this is not a flattering portrait. This is an effective portrait. I think he knows that he's old and has wrinkles. Okay, so it's not that I'm trying to make him look like he's 25 years old. So it's, again, remember what the idea is. What are you trying to say? What's the idea that you're trying to get across? Okay, all right, so the next part of this now is on travel. Now, I have a lot of images to show you here, and I've got places from all over the world. So the environmental portraits that I'm going to show you, some of them are lit, some of them are natural light, and I'll explain when I talk about each one. So I've got them broken down into different categories. The first place is going to be the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. I have been to Dubai 14 times, teaching for Gulf Photo Plus there. I've led photo tours to Oman. I've been to Oman 4 times. Oman is really fantastic. And also I was in Saudi Arabia on that job for Aramco. That was like 10 years ago now. There's a couple of pictures in there. But before I show you anything, this is, I love to read quotes, and Mark Twain is one of my favorites. So this is my favorite travel quote. Mark Twain: "Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness." Right? Because once you go to a foreign place, you start to see that it's not foreign. It's just something that you're not familiar with. And that people are people wherever you go. Everybody is human. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. This is the Grand Mosque in Abu Dhabi. Thank you. I just do a little mind blank there. So everybody wants a family portrait. Okay, this is an absolutely stunningly beautiful place, and there's the dad taking a picture of his family. Right? It's like there's no difference here than if your family was coming and you wanted to take them to the Statue of Liberty. Right? It's the same thing. Now this is in Saudi Arabia. Now I'm going to let you guys in on, guys and girls, on my trick. Anybody who's had a class with me knows what I'm about to talk about, and I'm willing to share this with everybody, okay? So there's a way, you know how people say cheese? Everybody say cheese. Cheese, right? So what's your mouth do? Cheese, okay? Now everybody say hi. Hi, hi. When you say hi, your mouth falls into the perfect position. You feel good. You connect with somebody. See, you're smiling. Your eyes light up. So everybody say hi again. Hi. Hi. And it's just, people relax, they breathe. It works everywhere, and you don't have to worry about any language barrier because people get it, right? So I photographed a lot of Arabian men, and when I ask them if I may photograph them, if they agree, sometimes they don't, sometimes their friends kind of tease them a little bit, and then they do agree, but they normally get very stoic. They're very proud and they get very stoic, right? So I will always shoot that. And then what I will do, so here's the first one, and then I'll stick my head around the corner of the camera and say, ha, 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 ha. And then everybody cracks up. So this is also in Saudi Arabia, and this is in one of the fishing villages in a little town called Qatar. It's not that little. And so I'm standing on the dock, and I'm in a full abaya, right? So, here I am with the camera, and I'm on the dock, they're on the boat. It's like as far over as the end of the room over here. And I'm waving at them. I'm saying, hello, hi, and waving at them, and they're all looking at me like, who's the crazy redheaded chick, right? It's like, what's going on? So they're all, and I'm holding the camera up, pointing at the camera, and going, "Come on, everybody, get together." So they kind of did. They're all looking at me, going, "What is going on here?" And then I start laughing, and then I do the ha ha ha, and then they all crack up laughing. This is the very first time I went to Dubai. We went out to the place where they sell the food for the camels. You know, they have camel races there. So these guys agreed. And then all of a sudden, they all got up and walked away. And I'm like, where are they going? And they walked over to this place and sat down. And this is porch lighting. This is the tent. They're under a tent, so there's no light from the top. All the light comes in. Beautiful skin tones. The light in their eyes is great. But they all just like sat down and lined up like this. I'm like, okay, I'm going to shoot that. I'm not going to worry about it. So again, look at the light on their faces. It's all that porch lighting, tent lighting, you know, bridge lighting, under anything, the overhang, right? It's the most beautiful light of all. Another reason why I love Bethesda Terrace. Saudi Arabia, this little bakery makes 1,000 loaves of bread every morning. Every morning. And they line up for this. I'm actually shooting through the little window with a wide-angle lens to get this shot. Also in Saudi Arabia, this is the local Starbucks. It's where you go, you get your coffee and tea, and you can have a little bit of your hookah. And I love the guy wearing a Versace t-shirt. This is in Sharjah, in the UAE. And I actually had to like climb a rope ladder to get up to this boat. And now, I have to tell you something. I don't speak anything but English, and not all that well sometimes. So I don't speak any other languages, and I travel to all these places where people don't speak any English. You don't need to have the correct words. You need to have the correct approach. Okay? You have to create your intention, your good intention, and the correct approach. People respond to smiles, and people are perfectly happy if you come up to them, and it's like if I have a camera hanging around my neck, which I don't have a neck strap on this, but if I come up to you and say, you know, hey, can I take your picture? It's pretty obvious. They know what I'm asking them, right? It's like, this isn't a mystery. So, and then I will talk to them a little bit, and I'll joke a little bit, and even if they don't understand anything, like if I want them to turn a certain way, I'll say, you know, take your nose and look up over there, like look up over there, right? And they get it. You know, it's like you can do a lot with just using your hands and smiling at people and talking to people. But I always spend time talking to somebody before I photograph them. I don't just run up and stick my camera in somebody's face, which I've seen. I'm going to talk about that when we get to the Ethiopia section. Okay, I'm really into birds of prey, especially falcons. And of course, you know, in the Arab world, the falcons are, you know, falcons are like racehorses. They can be $1 million. I mean, and so I got to know this falconer, and every time I would come, I would go out and photograph him. He always has 2 falcons. This is Oman. I'm not, you know, I photograph people in the street, but I don't call myself a street shooter, right? What I do is I walk up to people. I walk up to you. I find somebody I want to photograph, and I will have a relationship with that person. That's what I'm interested in. That's the kind of photography that I do. So it's not like I'm on the other side of the street, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's great photographers who do that. That's not what I do. You know, everybody's got to find their own way. I like to have the direct interaction. So these boys everybody's playing soccer in the background, and they just came over to take a break. And I said, you know, can I photograph you? And they were all kind of like, oh, yeah, right. And then I'm like, come on, put your arms around each other. And then I started laughing, and then they started laughing. And again, here we go. There's the laughing. So this is, you know, I keep walking over here, but I realize I have a laser pointer. You can see it. Nope. So this is the master goat seller. Okay, we went to a goat market in Oman. I've been to several of them now, and he is the master of it all. He's like 75 years old. He's blind in one eye, and everybody knows him, respects him. There's other people that sell goats, but he's the guy. And this is his son, who's laughing in the foreground, and he speaks English, so he could translate as we had our talking about this, and I got them to laugh. But now here is the master goat seller sitting in there's like a little brick walkway that goes down. The door's open, and he's just finished doing his books. So he's got the little pad of paper there. He's just put the money in here. And again, the light is just, he's in the shade, but there's sunlight out here, which is kind of like bouncing back up and around a little bit from underneath. It's a little monster lighting, but you know, he's kind of a heavy-duty guy, but you really see the blind eye in that. Okay, the fish market in Dubai, it's again in one of my favorite places to go. So if you look at it here, again, we've got where it's an overhang, right? It's all under an overhang, it's really big. He's a little bit closer to the outside, so I've got light coming in from here. But I just come up and talk to people, and I always show them the images. Okay, that means a lot for them to see it. Sometimes there's no way for you to be able to deliver an image to somebody. It's like if you're in primitive places, they don't have email, never mind a computer. They don't have a computer, so they have no way to get anything. You know what's really great is the Instax. Well, we don't have one up here, but you know the instant. So you know, for people who are traveling, you carry one of those and you take a picture and give it to them. They get a little picture. It's the most thrilling thing in the world for them. They just absolutely love that. So, fish market. This is another place on the fish market. Now, I've been to this fish market a couple of times, and even though it could be a year or two in between me going, they remember me. It's, you know, the kind of red curly hair is kind of hard to forget, right? So I love the light on him. There was a skylight in there. I feel like it's like a Rembrandt lighting coming down on this guy's face. Now I have another little series of it's kind of like places that you're kind of unexpected to see somebody on a cell phone, right? So there's a series of these. So here's the guys, you know, you can go for a camel ride in one of the souks. And this is also in one of the souks. It's like you just, and this is again porch lighting here. I just love this. This is also in Oman. This isn't really so much environmental, except that I used the other two guys to be the environment. So I just kind of placed them. This was Eid. It's one of their big celebrations. It's holy times, and everybody gets a new outfit, and so these guys all had different color hats on, so I just kind of like lined them up. Now, remember I mentioned a little bit earlier about sometimes it's a picture about a person and sometimes it's a picture about a place? Okay, so this is the mosque in Oman, in Muscat, and this woman obviously is, you know, she's got her crutches with her. I'm laying on the ground. If you haven't noticed this yet, I spend an awful lot of time on the ground. I wear a lot of black clothes because I'm on the ground a lot, okay, just trying to get a different point of view. But at first I was there photographing the arches, just wanting to have the first one in focus and let the other ones go off out of focus. And then I saw her and I waited for her to come into the shot and waited for her to be in a certain place. So patience is something that also really pays off. And there, it's about the place with the person in it. So I had this all lined up, and this guy was kind of walking around. I kept waiting and waiting and waiting for him to come into that perfect place. Okay, so now we're into Turkey. Okay, so I have another quote for you. Dagobert runes. I don't know who that is. People travel to faraway places to watch, in fascination, the kind of people they ignore at home. Okay, now, this is in a marketplace. You know, like if you went out to an open air market, or, you know, you're probably not you're looking at stuff, you're not really paying attention to the people. But look at that guy's face. I am so in love with him. I mean, that is just the most incredible face, his eyes, his nose, everything. And he actually saw me and came walking over to me, whether he was curious as to what I was doing. This was in Adıyaman, Turkey. This is a local market. This is not a touristy thing. There's no tourist here. This is where the people who live there, they go. There's barrel makers and cobblers and people. I mean, there's like all the crafts are there. There's all this stuff. And he just came up to me. And again, it's a little bit of porch lighting. You see there's a lot of little overheads. You kind of see some umbrellas back there. So, and the light is bouncing around out there. Gorgeous light on him, great light on his eyes. Okay, and this is in Istanbul. There's a place where the men go to play dominoes and backgammon. And looks like they're playing chess there. Well, I don't know if that may or may not be. But we were welcome to come in and photograph, but this one guy just didn't seem to be too happy about it. But I love that I only see that one eye of his. Okay, this was in that same place. You know, they drink all the Turkish coffee is in the little tiny glass, and it almost looks like tea. So you can drink like 20 of those to get 1 cup of coffee worth of caffeine. Okay, this is in the Grand Souk in Istanbul. Okay, this is back to Adiyaman. It's so funny because in the guidebooks they say Adiyaman, where the men wear baggy pants. We're reading this going, what does that mean? And then we get there, and they apparently, and they still all wear them, apparently it was easier on horseback to do this, but they still wear them now. So you'll see a couple other pictures. So he was in the marketplace, but he was resting. Okay, and there's the, he's preparing. Again, you can see the baggy pants there. So this is just the light coming in the door. And there's the cobbler. He's holding his little cup of coffee. Now, this was really interesting. We found that the young men, this was a couple of years ago, we found that the young men were all doing eyeliner. Okay, it's like everybody was, all the men were doing eyeliner. So here we are in the butcher shop. And then he's selling some of the plates. And here's another guy selling plates. I love to say this. You see that? We bought that. And we put it in our luggage in the outside pocket. And when we got back to Istanbul, it wasn't there. But that was mine. I love this guy. Sometimes, again, there's the attitude. It's just like, I looked at this marketplace. It's like the powwow. There's so much stuff that's going on. It's so busy. So you try to simplify. You try to kind of bring it down. Well, it's like, well, he's the coffee seller. So I love the big pile of the coffee beans. I love the, here's the measuring and the grinding, and he's wearing the same color. And just to get him set up, and I asked him if he would just kind of move over there, and he just did that. I didn't ask him to do that, but it was perfect. And then the attitude was just perfect, and that's all natural light. Okay, Myanmar. Myanmar is absolutely an amazing country. Okay, traveling. It leaves you speechless, then turns you into a storyteller. That's Ibn Battuta. Do you guys know who Ibn Battuta? Ibn Battuta was a Moroccan gentleman who spent 30 years traveling all the way to China and back. And I never heard of him until I went to Dubai, and one of the malls there is called the Ibn Battuta Mall. And there's 5 branches of the mall, and there's, in the Indian section, there is a full-size elephant. In the Chinese section, there is a pond with a full-size junk floating in it. There's, in the Moroccan section, it's all painted with, the sky overhead is it's like midnight with the stars. I mean, it's amazing. But this man went to all of these different places and learned languages. He wrote books. He taught people. He did trading. And he was gone for, I think, 30-something years. And I'd never heard of him before. So, sorry? I think he was actually before Marco Polo. So I think 1400s, something like that. So pretty amazing. So this place here in Myanmar, there are books, Myanmar is Burma. There are books with this place, this kind of corridor on the cover. And this is, something like 25% of all the people in Myanmar are monks or nuns. I mean, it's like a huge percentage of the population. So we actually went and found a few monks and asked them to come over and hang out with us a little bit. And we got a couple of young ones. And we got the umbrellas. And we thought, well, we don't have to be serious all the time. We can have some fun. So we just had them jump up in the air. And again, it's a great shot. If you walked out of that, if they weren't in that picture, you've got the diagonal lines, you've got the, where is it going to up here? It's like, you're a third of the way up. It's like everything is like, you still have to think about your composition and then have your person in the composition. Same thing here. This was a white pagoda that was huge. It was huge. And we had a whole bunch of little nuns. And right now there's like a stairway that goes up. I'm in the stairway that's covered. So all the light is just kind of bouncing around behind. Okay, this is in one of the temples. And just door light. And quite honestly, I set this up. I want to be really clear with you. It's like sometimes it is like it's there and I capture it, and I'm just deciding about where I'm going to be. But other times, if I have the ability, then I am going to capture it. Okay, so here we have the door light coming in. I mean, it's all this ornate, gilded woodworking. And so I asked him if he would stand and look out the door, and then I asked the other young boy to come and sit behind, so that it's a little bit more of a story. So, you know, I'm not, I want to just make sure that I'm really clear that I'm not somebody saying, oh, I just found this, it just happened to be there, because I'm such a great photographer that I'm always exactly in the right place at the right time when the magic happens. It's like, no, I make the magic. You know, it's like lots of times I have to go in and I have to make it happen. Here's some more of my cell phones with the monks on their cell phones, and this is at the Shwedagon Pagoda in yes, in the top, at the very top of the town. And this I thought was great. There was all of these monks praying, bowed down praying in front of all these Buddhas, and then all of a sudden he lifted up with his iPad to take a picture of the Buddhas. Isn't he great? Okay, so you know, you got to have a little bit of backlighting for the smoke to show up. And I have some, this is his ox back here. You know, you can kind of see a little bit of that. And I have some of the ox, it's a little more, you know, prevalent, like you understand it a little bit more. But the expression on his face here was just too good. Just too good. The Eggman? Goo 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 joob? Sorry, I mean, how can I resist? Now, you know, lots of times when I'm traveling, I've got the Fujis with me. But I also have the, you know, the X100 series. Now I have the X100S, Lee's got the F, and this was done with the S. So it's just kind of like, it's a small camera that I can hang around with that fixed lens. It's a wide lens, and it's a beautiful sensor, it's a beautiful lens, and it's just easy to pull it out, and, you know, and this really was, I didn't set this up. This was one, I just happened to be in the right place. Broom cellar. You know, now you see in Myanmar, you see all this stuff that's on their face. This is a plant, and they mix it with water and they grind it up, and it's a sunscreen. And so they do it as a sunscreen, but they also use it as a design. So you'll see the women in the morning, they'll be putting it on, and then they take a toothbrush and they do this, and it makes like design patterns in it. So you'll see the kids with it on. This boy really is very proud of that fish. There's a lot of weavers in Myanmar, a lot of craftspeople, and I just thought that she was adorable. These are all natural light. I spent a long time in this place, and I photographed so many different people in so many different ways. But sometimes it's like, look at the light that's coming in there. It's like you just get lucky sometimes. But you know, there's that other one, I think it's Louis Pasteur, that chance favors the prepared mind, right? So what does that mean? The more prepared you are, the luckier you'll get. Or when an opportunity presents itself, it isn't that you're lucky, it's that you're prepared. So whenever I come into a place, I walk around and I'm looking at what's going on, and I'm observing what's happening. What's the action? What's going on? Who are the people? What's happening here? I'm aware of what the place is. What does it look like? Where is there a design? How can I make an interesting composition out of this? But most importantly is, what is the light? Because if I don't have good light, I'm not going to have a good picture. If I don't have light that's appropriate. So if this was completely flat light or lit by tungsten overhead or fluorescent overhead, it wouldn't have the same impact of having that short lighting on her. And if you look, you know, we've got the main light coming from here, from the window over here. There's another window behind her, which is kind of providing that little rim and edge lighting on her face. So it's being aware of that and then waiting. It's like I couldn't tell her what to do or where to go, but I stayed there for a long time and I watched her movements. I watched what she did. Right? And then I knew which she'd be coming back over here again, because when you're doing something, there's going to be a repetition to it, so I could be prepared when she came back. Doing inlay work. And again, here we've got the double slash. So the windows are behind her, so it just kind of like emphasizes, it just makes it a little bit more dramatic with that light on the edge of her face. Okay, I love this. Okay, so this is Myanmar. I'm in this little town. It's the same town where the guy with the ox and the smoke and the no teeth and the big smile. Okay, so all the little pathways are all lined with all this like thatch, and so I was squatted down, just kind of going, well, this is kind of interesting. Is there something I can do about this? Because I've never seen a town that looked like this. And sometimes there's little doors in there, so that's how you get inside to the yards. But this is how everything is separated. So this little girl comes running. She's running down this back street over here, right? She's running along and running along and running along, and she sees me, and so she comes running up and she just stops and stares at me, right? And then the next kids come, because there's a whole bunch of them, okay? So then there's more. And there's still one more coming around the corner, right? And they all get to the, and they look at there just staring at me. They're going, what is she doing? Who is she? What's she doing here? So they're all just like, so I'm photographing, and then guess what I do? Ha 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 ha. And they just cracked up laughing. I'm sure that they're still, I'm sure they went home and told their parents about the crazy redheaded chick. And okay, Ethiopia. Okay, Maya Angelou. Perhaps travel cannot prevent bigotry, but by demonstrating that all peoples cry, laugh, eat, worry, and die, it can introduce the idea that if we try and understand each other, see, I get choked up when I read these things. If we try and understand each other, we may even become friends. This is something that, what I've learned from my travels is that we're all human beings on this planet right now. We're all the same. Every single one of us, if you take away everything else, take away what country you live in, where you live, what you do, what clothes you wear, what you believe, you take away all of that and we're all human beings. We're all exactly the same. We get up in the morning and we want to have something to eat. We want to have people to love and to love us. We want to be a part of a community. We want to have a place to live. We want to have a place where we're going to be safe, that we're going to be taken care of. We want to feel that we're contributing something in some way, right? That's universal. That doesn't change with anybody. And the travels that I have been on have really shown me this, have really taught me more than anything else about the oneness of all of this. And I'm not trying to be hippy-dippy here. I'm just saying that this is the experience that I've had. Now, I've been to Ethiopia twice with Epic Photo Tours. Is that Herb in the back over there? Actually, Herb is here. Hi, Herb. Herb Leventon from Epic Photos. I didn't know you were here until I turned the slide up and then I saw you back there. This is an absolutely amazing place. The country of Ethiopia, first off, a lot of people don't know that most of it's Christian, but you do still have the tribal people who are living pretty much the same way that they have for the last 10 or 20,000 years, with exceptions, because things are changing. Okay, the roads are being built, the dam is being built, the sugar plantations are being built, and a lot of the people who've been living in the Omo River Valley are going to be flooded out and they're going to be moved, and the culture is going to change. The way of life is going to change. And there's the good things and there's bad things, right? I mean, they're living very, very primitive. You're going to see, they're living in grass shacks. They're grinding corn on stones. They get old gasoline cans and they rinse them out and they use them to carry water from the river. There's no electricity. There's no, there's nothing modern here. This is tribal culture. And it's changing because now that the roads are built, now there's more tourists that can come down. So this is actually the Karo tribe. And you're going to see different kinds of things. Different tribes do different kinds of decorations, body painting decorations, piercings, the scarring, the scarification. You'll see a variety of that. So I just kind of want to let you know, okay, so that's what where we're at here. So they're really beautiful people. I mean, this is where we think that people originated. It's like Lucy, the oldest skeleton of all time, was in Ethiopia. Lucy was not in the museum when we were there. She was on tour, so I didn't get to see Lucy. Now you look at this and say, okay, well that's really interesting, but it's not really an environmental portrait. It's a great guy. The environment is in his eyes. Okay, so there you can see me standing in his eyes with my camera bag at my feet, and this is in the marketplace. So you can see that you see the blue sky and the dirt, and you see other people that are in the background. So there it is. But again, it's like I saw him, and just like the gorgeous face and the gorgeous eyes. Now also notice like his nose is kind of bluish. It's like, well, the skin is shiny, so he's reflecting the blue sky. That's not a mistake. That's not something to correct out. That's the way it is. Okay, also in the marketplace, this guy was just walking around holding a chicken. So I looked at him and I looked around, and he had the necklace on that had the blue and the coral color in it, and there was a building that was blue. So I asked him if I could bring him over, and I brought him over there, and I just said, just hold your chicken. It's like, okay. But you're telling a story, right? This is actually at the top of Addis Ababa is the capital city. At the top there is a monastery, a Christian monastery, and this is a nun that lives in a tarp shack. Okay, so she was there the first year. She was there the second year as well. She was still there. So it's, again, just a little bit to tell the story, right? You don't need to see the whole thing. This is the Hammer tribe. They do the hair. This is really cool. What they do is that they take either water or spit, and they take a combination of goat fat and ochre. And they take a strand of hair, and the girls will all sit around and do this. And they do this, and they roll it until it rolls into those little ringlets, and then they take a knife and they cut it off so that they can make the edges of it where they want it to be. So I found this absolutely fascinating. So the first year that we were there was an event that was about to take place that was called the bull jumping ceremony, which is a coming of age trial for a young man to enhance his standing in the village. And I can't show you those pictures, but it's a big deal that people come from different villages all over to celebrate. It's like a bar mitzvah in a way, because it's coming of age and, you know, coming into manhood. But they were preparing for, there was going to be a bull jumping ceremony, and so all these teenage girls were sitting around, and they were, you know, doing this with each other's hair. And I went and I sat down with them, and I had a cap on, I had my hair all pulled back, and so I pulled all that off, and I pulled it down, and I went, you know, I put my hair out, and they're all like looking at me, and I'm like, yeah, it's okay, you know, go ahead. And the only English word I heard anybody say was this one girl took my hair and she said, fire, which I thought was really cool. And then they just did like a little bit of it, and then, you know, they were flipped out, and I really didn't want all that goat fat in my hair, so so we stopped. But, you know, you see a lot in the communities here. It's, again, you see a little bit of the thatched roof in the background. The women spend the days together. The men spend the days together. The men do the farming and the hunting and the farming and the herding, and the women, you know, stay back in the village. But it's very supportive. Now, this is right after a bull jumping ceremony. So just to tell you about this is that the communities come together, and the man in the middle is the one he's just successfully jumped the bulls. They line up 10 Brahma bulls, and people hold them. And then they have to jump across them. There's 10 of them. They have to jump on their backs, and they have to do that, go back and forth. They have to do that 3 times. They have to do it naked, and which is why I can't show you the pictures. They have to do it naked, and they have 4 chances to do that. So if they fall off once, they have another chance to do that. And then once they once they do that, then they are elevated, and the next elevation up is called a whipper. And so the guy who's standing next to him and the other guy who's walking away, they're whippers. And so they're looking out for the young man who's just succeeded in his ceremony. And you can always tell the whippers because they've got their feathers on. I thought that this was really interesting because it looks like he's wearing a kilt. But it's not. It's not. And it's once the ceremony is over, I mean, they don't mind the tourists coming, so there could be hundreds of people around, and all the people are there, and the women are dancing, and they've got bells on their legs, and they're tooting horns, and they're, you know, chanting and singing. I mean, it's like an amazing thing to see. And once it's over, everybody's just like gone. In like 1 minute, everybody's left. This is in the Mercy tribe. The Mercy are kind of like they've got everything. They do the body painting, they do the piercing, they do the scarification, they do the lip plating. So you're going to see that in a few minutes too. So, but you'll also see some of the, oh, I'm sorry, I'm bouncing around a little bit. This is the Herb, what's the name of this tribe? The Dasanach. Now, you see these guys sitting on these little stools? They don't have chairs. You see the village that they're living in? They don't have chairs and tables. They carry around these little stools. They look like a little saddle. And they can sit down anywhere they want because they always have it with them. So, so these men, the 2 men in the middle are blind, and the other 2 guys are not. And I waited. I saw that other woman with her young child in the background, and I waited for her to move into the picture, into the background. Now, these guys were also in the same village, and I love these guys, and guess what I was doing with them? Ha, 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 ha. So this was the first year that I went. The second year that I went, we came back, and the guy that's on the left, he was no longer with us, but the other 2 still were, and they saw me, and they remembered me, and they came up to me, and I got out of the car, and they came up to me, and they went, ha, 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 ha. So here you can see he's holding his little saddle. He's a little chair. In the marketplace, I'm doing the ha 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 thing with the girls. So it's, again, you can see that there's a lot of stuff going on in the background, right? But I've got them in the shade of their own umbrella. So again, I'm being aware of all this. If they were in the direct sunlight, the light would be terrible on their faces. Okay, this is in the Mercy Village as well, and this is, it's like I could not get that girl in the right-hand corner to laugh. That was the most I could get. The other girl is, she's covering her mouth, laughing, and the other girl's laughing, but I could not get her to laugh. No matter what I did, she just would not, she wouldn't go there. Okay, this is the Karo tribe. The Karo tribe is up on the top of a bluff, and that's the Omo River in the background. And there is the chief with a couple of the young men balancing light. This is lit with a portable flash in a softbox off to camera left. And just enough detail in the boys that you can see that they've got the body painting, and but it's kind of like here's the, the older and the younger, and and this is their place, this is their land. Okay. Okay. So now you get to see the pretty stuff. Okay. Okay. Let me find my quote. Stuff your eyes with wonder. Live as if you'd drop dead in 10 seconds. See the world. It's more fantastic than any dream made or paid for in factories. Ray Bradbury. Okay. I lead a photo tour to Venice for Carnival every year. Every year. This coming year, and it's late this year, it's the end of February, beginning of March. It will be my 8th time of leading a tour for Carnival. It is the most spectacular, amazing, awesome, colorful, wonderful pageantry, history, out there craziness. I mean, it's just amazing, absolutely amazing. I keep saying it gets better every year, and it isn't that the festival gets better, it's because I get to know more people, I get to know more places, I get to see more things. Now, I do this, by the way, I gave you guys the flyer that talks about this. I do this with Dave Nightingale, who's another Fuji photographer who's based in England, and Fabio Tian, who was a Venetian photographer. So the three of us started this 8 years ago, and now the fabulous Lee Varys comes along as well. We only take 12 people on this trip, and you have 4 photographers. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. But Lee got a pixel stick a few years ago. Do you guys know what a pixel stick is? Okay, it's a long wand, and it has LEDs in it, and it's kind of like a reverse scanner. You can put a bitmap in there that has an image in it. You have to have a long exposure. So in this case here, there's the St. Mark's Basilica in the background here, and it's actually before dawn. So the sky is just starting to get light. When we first started shooting this, sky was like pitch black. So we have them set up, cameras on the tripod. It's about an 8 to 10 second exposure. Open up the shutter, flash, so they're illuminated by the flash, and then Lee is standing behind them, the camera's over there, he's standing behind them with this LED, waving it around and walking behind them, right? So there's no light on him, and it's dark, and he's just a light that's going back towards the camera. So you're basically throwing a pattern onto the sensor, right? So this is what we did. Now, these are people that we have worked with them for 4 years now. We've gotten to know some of the costumers. So now we're able to, in fact, they sent us pictures of their costume ahead of time, so we knew that we could put the blue bitmap in for this one so that we would be able to match with their costumes and put them in front of the basilica. So we'd have the white and the gold and the blue and make it all work together. So it's really, really cool. So I'm showing you kind of like a couple of spectacular things first. So you can also make fire. So this is Andrea from Germany, and she is obviously the devil, and that is in front of the Doge's palace. So again, you can see it's much darker there. We did this on 2 different days, but this is earlier so that we don't really have any light in the sky. There was a little bit of light on inside the Doge's palace. So again, Lee is back there, and you can't just do it once. You have to do it like 10 times because it's never going to be exactly the same. So you just have to keep trying it and trying it and trying it. Now, the person has to hold still during that 10-second exposure. But a little bit of wobble like this isn't going to matter. They're lit by the flash, not by the pixel stick. So once the flash goes off, they're already laid down. Their image is laid down, and it's sharp. So everything else is just kind of like going on. So So this is just to show you, to get your appetite whetted for what you see. People will spend over $5,000 on their costumes, and they work on them all year long. Like the first people that we showed you, Elaine and Muriel, in the blue, all year long they work on their costumes. And they do something different every year. Sometimes people recycle costumes, like they'll come back and use the costume again, or they'll do something a little bit different to it. There are 3 sisters whose all last name is Rose. This is Mona Rose, and I photographed the Rose sisters off and on over the years. In the beginning I didn't know, and now I do know them. And this year all 3 sisters were dressed up in pheasant, like pheasants. So it's like all the colors are like pheasant colors, and they're always very elegant and just like absolutely amazing. And that's the San Salute Church that's in the background. So we're at the canal, early morning light. So now this is something that, well, I'll tell you in a second. So this is, the sun has just come up, and I've just got the flash. This isn't really so much environmental, but I liked all the blue and the white with her blue. And I have to tell you that this was a grab shot. My flash is on the camera. I have the grid spot on it. And she was getting ready to leave, and the wind was blowing, and I'm looking at this, and I said, oh, please, I got 2 shots. And that was it. And this was one of them. Okay, this is what happens in Venice, is that Carnival starts 2 weeks before. Lots of stuff happens. People start to show up early. There's people that come from all over the world that are dressed in the costumes. And there's all kinds of events that are happening and balls, weeks beforehand. In fact, in our tour, we leave the day before Carnival. We leave before Fat Tuesday. Okay, we leave on Monday because it's too insane. You can barely walk through the streets because there's so many people there. So we start like the Tuesday before and go through Sunday night, and then everybody leaves on Saturday. But in that 2 weeks ahead of time, the people in the costumes who've been doing this for a while, what do they want? Photographs. So they know that the serious photographers will find out about this, and they will be in St. Mark's Square before dawn. So we go out there at 6 o'clock in the morning. So the sky is pitch black, the street lights are on, okay, and we get out there and we use our portable flash. Sometimes you see people with full lighting kits to come out there, right? So we go out there and we photograph them, flash on camera, flash off camera. You're going to see a bunch of techniques that I'm going to explain to you. And they want to be photographed. So you could go out there at 6 o'clock in the morning, and there could be 5 people in costume. There could be 50 people in costume. And there could be 5 photographers, and there could be 50 photographers. Very seldom are you the only one that's out there, because photographers know about this. And if you look in the background, the street light that's in the middle, you see another couple that are in similar dress, and you see people standing around with their flashes. And so, there's other photographers. So you kind of watch out. You try to not get in people's way so that, so that everybody can get the shot. Like the costumer will come and get to a certain place and stand there, and then there may be several different people around. But again, you're going to see me on the ground a lot in some of these pictures. So this is balancing light. The way that this is done, so, part of what I'm telling you here is technical stuff, and part of it is thinking about the concept. So we have the 2 dressed the same. If you notice, the one on the left has more light on her than the one on the right. That's my flash with the grid spot. Okay, I'm using the Rogue grid spots. So with that grid spot, I can make 3 sizes of grid, and I make the tiny grid, and I pointed it a little bit more to the left to make it look a little bit more like she's lit from the street light instead of with the flash coming straight direct on. So it's a little bit more effective instead of just, boom, here's a flash, we know that there's a flash on them, right? So depending upon what's going on will depend upon how much time somebody will give you. Lots of times they want to get out to the canal because they want to stand there because the sun rises behind them. So sometimes they'll cooperate and stay with you for a little bit longer. So this is probably about a 1-second exposure here to try to get that in. Now this is a lot of what I do. I do this effect dragging the shutter. So it's a combination of the flash and the ambient light. Obviously you have to have light behind and no ambient light on the subject. You put your flash on the subject. You light them with the flash, the ambient light's in the background. I shake the camera, I spin the camera, I pan the camera back and forth, up and down, diagonally. I zoom the camera, I zoom and spin the camera. I'm shameless. I will do anything. I will try everything. And people say, well, do you zoom in or do you zoom out? And I say, yes. That's what I do. I zoom in, I zoom out, I shake the camera, I try everything. I have found, something for you to know, I have found that in trying to do this, the best shutter speed is either an 1/8 of a second or a 15th of a second. If you're at a 30th of a second, then you don't really have enough time to get much camera movement in. If you're at a 1/4 of a second, it could be too much camera movement. So I can't tell you exactly how to do this. I have a favorite saying in photography, which is several people in the class who are here know me. Everything depends upon everything. So I can't tell you an exact formula for something because it depends upon what you want to do. So sometimes if you spin really fast, it may be too much. If you shake really fast, then it could be that all the blur goes through where the flash has laid down the image, and so now you don't really see anything except the blur. So you've got to kind of find that balance, and it's the balance between how fast you shake and what the shutter speed is. But the 1/8 to the 15th of a second works the best. So here you can see I got a little bit of zoom going on. Okay, this is one of the Rose sisters. This is before I knew the Rose sisters, but this was done about 4 years ago. And here you can see I'm kind of panning at a diagonal on this one. Flash is on the camera and on TTL. So when the flash is on the camera, by the way, I always use TTL. If it's off the camera, I put it on manual, okay, with some exceptions, and I'm going to tell you that exceptions as we get a little further into this. So I've been using the Fuji flashes for years until this past year. This past year I did use the Fuji flash, but I also used the ProPhoto A1, which I'll show you in a few minutes. But this is the Fuji flash on camera, TTL. When it's on TTL, you know, you just have to adjust your ISO. You pick your f-stop, the flash will give you that. You know that you want to be at an 1/8 or a 15th of a second, so you have to adjust your ISO to find out what's going to be the correct exposure to get to that place. So here's another zoom. Now here again, I'm on the ground, okay, looking up. And in this case, I have taken my flash off the camera and put it on the ground going up. It's the angel of death. Do I want to light the angel of death pretty? No, I'm going to monster light the angel of death. So the flash is from below, so it's all really spooky on the Grand Canal. One year, every morning I'd get up in the morning and you'd come out and you'd see that there'd be somebody out there sweeping up the confetti because everybody's been partying all night long for weeks before, right? And and then, you know, that was what, 3 years ago, Lee, or 4 years ago? So 3 years ago that we got confetti. And for all these years I've been going there and seeing people sweep up confetti, and it wasn't until 3 years ago I went, oh, why don't we get some confetti? We can throw confetti at the people in the costume and do that with the flash and see what happens, right? Let's try that. But you have to ask, because if people are spending all year and $5,000 on their costume, they don't want to be picking confetti out of all the tiny little gem things that they've woven in there, right? So some people were like, no, 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 stand back. Other people were like totally fine with it. So this year, so that's actually, Lee is holding the flash off camera. He is my voice-activated light stand, my Val, and he is the confetti thrower, all right? He's doing both. Now, just in case you don't know, Lee is a photographer. You know, he's not just my voice-activated light stand. He's a fantastic photographer, so we go back and forth on this, but he helps me out a lot when I'm doing this. So he's holding the flash and throwing the confetti at the same time. And since I am, it's actually, you see how it's kind of like dragging? See the shadows from that? It's because the little spots are lit up by the flash, but with that long exposure, where it's moving through, it's causing a shadow on the sky in the background. So this isn't me doing anything in the camera. This is just the way it happened. And it just looks like the campanile is like, has like little lights exploding out of it. Okay. This is another throw in the confetti. And again, I'm on the ground. Now, the sun is just above the horizon at this point. And there's a lot more people. The lighter it gets, the more people come out. So at this point, there's a lot of people walking around. If I was at eye level, you would see massive amounts of people that are walking around. Now, again, I'm just getting the feeling. I've got the street lights there. You see the street lights are gone at this point. And Lee's throwing the confetti up in the air, and it's being frozen by the flash. So this, I'm not doing anything fancy with the camera here. I'm just holding on. Now, most of the time as I'm doing this, I'm not using a tripod. So if I'm shaking the camera, all that, I can't be in a tripod. But if I'm not doing any of that, I'm still hand holding. People say, but how can you hand hold at an 1/8 of a second? Well, what's being exposed at an 1/8 of a second is the background. And it's far away, and it's small. It's not like it's this big in the frame, and you're trying to hand hold and it's going to move. So it's really not a problem to hand hold. I mean, I've hand held, like that first one I showed you of the two women. that was about a 1 second exposure, half a second or 1 second exposure. So, you know, that's fine. I have to tell you one story because I don't think I have it in here. No, I don't have it in here. Is that the Alan and Muriel, the pixel stick, that first picture I showed you with the pixel stick, they were the first people that we threw confetti at. And they were wearing pink and purple, and it was just like amazing. And there's about 8 photographers around. So Lee's standing off to the side, holding the light. Here are the people right here. He's standing over here. There's all the photographers over here shooting, and I'm counting them down. You know, okay, 3, 2, 1, go. Well, all the other people are getting the benefit of the confetti being thrown, right? Lee was like a god. They were cheering Lee, applauding Lee. Go, Lee, Lee, that was a really good one. Hey, Lee, next time, can you throw it a little higher? I just love this. This was really just a grab shot. I mean, the hand sticking in with the cell phone, just like capturing that. Now, we had fog. This was 2 years ago. We had fog, and that was the most amazing, mystical, magical. So this is now, you know, the sun is up, but there's no sun because it's all fogged in. So everything is just like it's like you're inside of a big piece of cotton candy, right? So here's the fog. Now they're lit. You know, we have the rapid box. You guys know the Westcott rapid box? It's about 20 inches wide. The flash is inside of that, and that will light people full length, top to bottom. Here you can see that the street lights have already gone out. But I kind of liked that. I kind of liked that everything was kind of like dark and mystical behind them. And where is my camera angle? I'm on the ground. I wear black in Venice. Okay. This is lit with the portable flash with the grid on it off camera. And this is the Fuji GFX. So this is the medium format GFX. I actually did shoot it in color, but the more I looked at it, the more I really liked this in black and white. Now, it's pretty hard to see here, but the costumes and the masks of what they do. I mean, you can see he's got the spider webs all over his cuff and the hat. And if you look closely, he's got a little skull drawn in the middle of his forehead here. And there's all these designs. I mean, it's just amazing, amazing what these people do. It's just like their imaginations are just crazy. It's kind of like Burning Man cosplay. Steampunk has started to show up. 2 years ago, we saw steampunk for the first time. But, you know, the carnivals, it started up again in the 1970s. So, you know, it's been going on for quite some time. That's the doctor's mask, okay? So, you know, during the plague, the doctors would wear these masks and they'd stuff all the herbs in there so that they couldn't smell the death. So this is a very popular thing. Now, this was out on the island of San Salute. San Salute is called the Plague Church. So if you're standing in St. Mark's Square and you've got the big part of the Grand Canal, if you look over there, that big rounded church dome, that's San Salute. It's the church, the Virgin Church. It was built as an offering to end the plague in Venice. And I can't remember what the numbers were. Tens of thousands of people died in the plague in Venice. So it was really, they were quite devastated by it all. So this was not a costumer. This was just a man walking around. And I ended up talking to him, and I told him that I'd send him the picture, and I got his card. And he was a doctor of philosophy. I thought that was really great. I also photographed the regular people in Venice, like the people where you go and buy your masks. You know, we go out to the island of Burano, which is the colorful island, and I always give my students an assignment that they have to go out and photograph people that they don't know, and they have to talk to them, and they have to arrange them, and they have to tell a story. Okay, so this is the day that everybody hates me. But they come back with some amazing things. So, you know, she was just this lovely shopkeeper. They have awnings. There is that porch light, that gorgeous light, and just the mask out of focus in the background. Okay, I love these guys. This is actually at the fish market. And whenever they see somebody they think is American, I don't know, do we look American? So they start playing Hello, Dolly. And then, of course, you know, you have to photograph your gondolier, and you have to have your gondolier has to be heroic. So this is with the Rialto Bridge in the background, and you know, up against the sky and that late afternoon light, and you know, So it's, again, you're telling a whole story there. It's just little bits and pieces of things to get that story across. Another shot of the gondoliers. This was, again, one of just being prepared. As I was walking up the stairs, I saw that one guy had the red shirt on. So I was just kind of standing around, because, you know, people are going in gondolas underneath the bridge that we're on. So he finally turned around, looked at me, I smiled at him, and he smiled back at me with just the back of the other guys. That's the closest I come to street shooting. We also hire models. So we hire a male and a female model for 2 afternoons. One afternoon we do just natural light, and one afternoon we do flash. And we also rent the Renaissance costumes. We rent the traditional Renaissance costumes. So we can then take them and go wherever we want, and we can you know, do whatever we want. And we're always fighting off other people, because everybody's running around with their camera or their iPhone, and they want to like jump in front of you and get the picture. And it's like, no, no, no. So this is a class. This is a class. And you know, sometimes you're successful. This is 2 flashes. The rapid box is off to camera left, and on the right is a flash with a grid on it. So that provides the hair light on her, a little bit of edge light on his hat, and they're overall lit with that rapid box. You don't need a lot to be effective. You can do a tremendous amount. If you have 1 flash, you can do a lot. If you have 2 flashes, you can do a tremendous amount. Do you need 3? Sometimes it's handy. 4? Sometimes. But most of the time, I find you can do just about anything you could want with 2 flashes. It will be really, really helpful to be able to do so many different kinds of things, provided that you understand about the lighting. Direction, quality, and depth. I haven't talked about that yet, so I'm going to talk about that for a few minutes right now. So, all light has 3 aspects. Direction, where is the light coming from? Where are you placing the highlights and the shadows? Quality, is it hard light, soft light, bounce light, diffuse light? And depth. When I say depth, I'm talking about how dark the shadows are. When you have dark shadows, it's really dramatic. You can have the same picture, okay? This one has the shadows filled in, this one has the shadows black, and they're completely different feelings. So that depth of light, how dark the shadows are, is going to have a lot to do with the mood. Now, the direction of light, where you're placing your highlights and shadows, also has to do with showing off the form as well as giving some mood. If you have a split lighting, half of the face is lit, half of the face is lit, then you have half lit, half in the shadow. That's very dramatic. You have a Rembrandt light, that triangle of light, it's very noble. You have a loop light, which is most of the face lit with a little shadowing around here. It's always good light in the eyes, looks good on anybody. And then the butterfly light is the one that's straight on. That's just above eye level. You get a little shadow under the nose, a little shadowing here. You can also call that the glamour light. So those are your basic lighting patterns. So you're defining the face as well as giving you some towards the mood. The more shadow you have, the more dramatic it's going to be. The more light you have, the happier the feeling is going to be. Okay? The quality of light. If you have a hard, direct light, it's like the sun. It's going to be contrasty. It's going to show up detail, texture. It's going to have more color saturation to it, right? If you have a softer light, it's going to spread out. It's going to be softer highlights. It's going to wrap around a little bit more. So that's why we have all these different things, like soft boxes and umbrellas and grid spots and beauty dishes and all these different things. So each one of them is to give you more control over what the light is going to do for you. Is it going to show you more detail? Is it going to be a happier light? You've got to combine those 3 things together, combined with your idea, with your concept. Okay? So in this case, again, we're dragging the shutter. We've lit them very nice and put that little bit of edge light on them. This is all natural light. And again, this is one of our hired models. I really like this guy. He was kind of like the modern version, right? He was a little rough and tumble with the 2-day growth of beard and the little attitude kind of thing going on here. But you see the arches in the background? It's just that, and you see that little bit of the gritty concrete. So it's enough to pick up. You know, the viewer's brain will fill in. One of the other things we do is we go to a working glass factory. Now, the island of Murano was called the Glass Island, right? And that's where a lot of this really fine art glass is made. There's lots of demonstrations for tourists. They have little bleachers that are set up, and somebody will come out and walk you through and tell you about all this stuff. Because of Fabio, who was Venetian, he has connections, and we get to go into working glass factories. Now, we get to stand over there or stand over here, because these guys, it's choreographed. And everything is timed. They don't speak to each other. It's like he pulls the molten glass out of the kiln. He brings it over here. The guy comes over here. It gets rolled. Then it comes over here. It gets blown. Then there's another piece comes over here, and he drops another molten piece on this while he's holding it up. I mean, it's amazing to see this actually in person. But you can't get in their way because you're going to die. It's dangerous. But this guy was kind of like, he was one of the older guys. He's like a master of what he's doing. And I love just his gesture here. So here it is. Somebody's come over. He's already blown out the glass, and now here's the stem part of it. So I love this because I love just the hint of light on his face. This is more about the action than it is about the person, but it still is about the person because he's the guy who's making this, right? So, and this is another thing where you see the repetition. The same thing happens over and over and over again, so that you get to plan it. You get to say, okay, I know that he's going to come over here now, so I can be ready. I'll be pre-focused in that area. I know the action that's going to happen. I can make sure that I'll be in the right place. And even then, you still, I mean, I shot this probably 6 times. And I do probably have a bunch of pictures that work, but I really like this one because you can see the scissors just starting to cut that molten piece that's hanging there and just that edge of light that's on his face. This is, one of the things I say is that not all portraits do you have to see the face. So this is the glass blower who's standing on that, and of course you don't see him, and you see the molten glass, the guy down below, but he's like doing this, right? So you just see the assistant, but you don't really see the glass blower. Okay. This is also a kind of a little bit of an odd effect. First off, where am I? I'm on the ground. Okay, I am on the ground. So this guy with all the peacock feathers and this long train that he has, and he's under the portico of the Doge's palace. Okay, so you've got the big arches. I mean, it's just an absolutely beautiful area. Now, what I did here was I have a grid spot on the camera with an orange gel, a CTO. So it turns it into tungsten. Turns my flash into tungsten color. I set my white balance on tungsten. So now where the flash illuminates him, the color will be correct. But in the background where the available light is, that's already kind of bluish light because it's in the shade. But now, if you went outside and you put your camera on tungsten, all your pictures would be bluish, right? So I did that here on purpose. So he's lit with the flash, which is, the white balance is set correctly for tungsten, and then the background becomes very blue. And I have a little bit of zoom going on here, just a little bit. I just wanted a hint because there's already so much stuff going on. If I zoomed a lot on this, it would just kind of like overwhelm everything. Now, this is also with the GFX, and the GFX has an articulating screen. So does the XT2 and 3. So with this right here, I could have just put this on the ground. I didn't have to get on the ground. I could have put it on the ground and kneeled down and been able to look right into it. Right? It's one of these things that I love about these cameras is the articulating screen. But in this case, I am actually laying on the ground, holding the camera here with my feet spread, shooting because there's 8 people behind me that want to shoot as well. And if I was standing up and kneeling over, then I would be blocking off that shot from other people. So I wanted to make sure that other people were able to get their shot while I was doing this. So I was literally laying flat on the ground like this. Was not comfortable. This is actually in twilight, and again, just a little bit of camera shake on this one. Now, this is done, okay, so, that Profoto A1, oh my God, I don't know what it is. These guys are geniuses, the engineers that have made this. It's, in case you haven't seen it, it's round instead of a square thing like this. It's round. So the light comes and wraps around a little bit more. Plus, it's got kind of like a Fresnel-like covering on it. So the quality of light that comes out of that is really beautiful. It's like skin tones are really kind of smooth. It's gorgeous. But you can also get a shell. So you mount the camera like this. You put the shell on the top of it. So the shell is like this. So the light comes and bounces up and bounces into it and then comes out and spreads around. So what I did this year was the first time that I had the A1s, I had collapsible stands. My stand will collapse to be this small. The legs, the kind of legs fold up. And then when you extend it up, it'll extend up to about 6 feet tall. And it's very, very light, and it fits in your luggage, which is a very helpful thing when you're traveling with a lot of gear. So I put the A1 on that. I have my Fuji controller, and it's TTL off camera. So I would just find my person, and I would say, okay, I'm going to put the light here. I'd put it down, I'd get myself in position, and I'd start to shoot. Because on TTL, it was perfect every time. Every time. I'm still picking my shutter speed for what I want the background tonality to be, you know, how light or dark I want the background to be. But it was absolutely perfect. So Lee lost his job of being my voice-activated light stand because I could just... So then he could go back and do more of his own shooting instead of trying to help me with my shooting. So it was great. I just walked around and was able to do this, and it worked out absolutely beautifully. So here now we're on the opposite side. So that's St. Mark's Basilica you see in the background on the canal. So we're on the opposite side. It's not the San Salute Church. It's another church that's over further. And there's one afternoon that a bunch of people in costume go out there at sunset. So you can see we didn't have much in the sky, but we did have a little bit of color. I mean, there was some that was there, but we didn't have like a great sunset. So they are lit with that shell. Two people, full length, not standing next to each other, full length top to bottom, beautiful coverage. Okay, that's available light, and that was also an early morning, the fog. Now, here's another thing about the eyes. The people in the masks, you really have to make sure that you have light in the eyes because they color everything around their eyes is black, so that it's just that their eyeballs will come out. And they all have masks on, so their face is back a little bit. So if you don't have any light in there, then it's just black holes. So you got to be really careful. Now, in this case, it wasn't hard, and this is no flash. This is just all natural light. It was early morning light through the hazy. You see that little haze that's there. So there is light that's on them. And then that's the San Salute Church in the background. But I liked that their colors were all the same as what was going on in the background. Okay, here's one of the Rose sisters again. This is Mona Rose. And this is the early morning light. So normally what we do is we go out, we do the before dawn. We do before dawn, and then we wait for the light to come up. And when we have, so there's sometimes if it's overcast, we don't have the dawn light. But here's the early morning light, that first hour of sunlight. You're done shooting by 8 a.m., you know, because it's great. Now, here she is. The sun is coming through in between those pillars. Those are all little light strands that light up at night. But she's turned into the light, and I worked with her a little bit to get her in position. They're willing to work with you. All the costumers have cards with their picture on it and their email, because they're French, they're German, they're Italian, they come from all over the place. So they'll have a card with their email, and you ask them for their card. Then they know that you know what you're doing, right? And then you have more ability to guide them and say, can I have you turn this way? Can I bring you over here? Can I move you to a different location? There's normally a bunch of other people around. When I did this, there was one guy who kind of like put her in this really terrible place, and I waited, and when he was done shooting with her, then I came back and brought her back. But she's the swan queen. She has a swan on her head, you know, and her sister had a swan on her head. So the Rose sisters were swans 2 years ago. This year they were pheasants. So, but just the, you know, the gesture, the rose, the whole thing. I mean, that early morning light is just absolutely fantastic. Okay, now this is the Golden Woman. Okay, this is my last image here that I have to show you. So the Golden Woman was backlit, early morning light. She's standing in the portico. She's across from the Doge's palace. So the sun is kind of coming up behind her, right? So it's kind of like over that way. So several people had been working with her. I actually photographed her on the canal with the sun rising right behind her. And I'm looking at that costume, and it was just like absolutely beautiful. But then she walked over here, and I went, oh, that's really great now that I've got the early morning light. And there was a bunch of people around, and you know, some people wanted to do something, and she worked with them, and I did a couple of pictures, and I kept saying there's something else here. This is my final story to you, because it's my favorite two sayings in photography. First one is everything depends upon everything. The second is from the I Ching, which is perseverance furthers. The more you work something, the better it's going to be. The harder you work, you keep putting one foot in front of the other, you're going to get somewhere. So I saw somebody working with her, and I got a few shots of that, and it was like, okay, well, that was pretty nice. And then I walked away, and then somebody took her and like put her in the shade. And even she was like, really? You know, no. And she, you know, so she moved around, and then I shot a little bit more. There was other people around. I shot a little bit more. And then I walked around, and I saw looking down the corridor like this. Now, this is the Fuji 90mm f2. the equivalent of a 135 on a full-frame camera, but this is shot at f2. I got this lens like 4 days before we left for Venice. I kept it on the XT20 on, I've got one of those belt things, one of the spider holsters, and I just kept it on there. The 90 was never taken off that camera, so I could always just pick it up and shoot it. It's just unbelievable. So, because the bokeh is just like so amazing. So I looked at this, and I looked at a couple of things, and I waited for that last group of people to be done with her, and I walked over to her and I said, I have an idea in mind, and let me show you. And I showed her some pictures, and she was like, oh, yes, absolutely. And I said, okay, come with me over here. And I got her lined up so that I have those lights kind of like going along her back, the little sparkly lights over the top of her head on the left-hand side, just getting her in that right place with that light coming through so all the fur is backlit. But look at her mask. She's wearing a gold mask, okay? I'm not lighting anything here. You saw the picture of Mona Rose. You see those columns? Okay, well, when the sun is up a little higher, those columns are lit. So the light that's on her face is the light that's bounced off of those columns. All right, so this is where, find the light. Go look around, see what's going on with the light, and then put your person in it. But here was a combination of that, of knowing the light, understanding light, seeing all the possibilities, and then taking the steps. I probably shot 200 images of her in like 4 different places. And I got to this one. I did a couple others after this one, but when I shot this one, I knew that I had it. And that's another thing, I said, don't stop. Because, you know, if you keep going after that, you might come up with something else. You know, it's really easy for us to say, oh, that was good. I'm done now. It's like, okay, well, that was good. What else can I do? Right? Take it a step forward. So this is a little bit of bragging. I entered this in the Plymouth Center of the Arts. They have an annual photography show. They had 1,400 entries from around the world. It's quite a famous show, and I got Best of Show this year. So, oh, thank you. I wasn't doing it for that. I was really, really excited about this. This is really one of my favorite all-time pictures, and definitely my favorite from the Carnival. So I think I have an ending quote for you. Yes. It's another Mark Twain. And I'm going to get choked up again because I just get choked up. Okay. 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than by the things you did do. So throw off the bow lines, sail away from the safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, and discover. Thank you. Thank you. So I want to tell you a couple of things. You can reach me. You can email me at bobby@bobbylane.com. There's my website, and there's my Facebook page and my Instagram. Okay, but well, you all have the flyers out there already. But I do want you to see this: the Bobby and Lee's Photo Adventures. It is our website that has our educational and our travel information on it. It isn't fully fleshed out yet. We've done like the soft launch. We haven't done the big launch of it yet. But there's a lot of stuff that's on there now, and you will be able to find out the information from these trips. But I do want to make sure that you know how to reach me. Okay. All right. Thank you all. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.